Now, if you're also new to the NoSQL world, or if you've been using a relational database within your mobile application, and if you're wondering why JSON? Well, first and foremost, JSON is arguably the de facto data exchange format on the internet. So if you're building a mobile application today, chances are you are consuming one or more web services which is delivering content in JSON format. So what this really means is like your platform is going to natively support some sort of JSON encoder, decoder, or serializer, deserializer. And if you're working with any modern programming languages, you're probably dealing with objects. Now, if you have to map the object-oriented paradigm into a relational schema, there is going to be an impedance mismatch. In fact, there's going to be this massive growth of tables because you need some way of representing nested objects and arrays. Wouldn't it just be nice if you can think objects and store data in JSON, again, which maps very well to the object-oriented paradigm? So you're avoiding this sort of impedance mismatch and the need for having to translate using some sort of an ORM from the object world into the relational world. The last one, and probably one of the more compelling arguments, is JSON, it's a NoSQL database, right? And what we mean is your data is not bound by a strict data model. So this means your application can work with semi-structured, unstructured data. That's great. A lot of the applications that are built around are consuming and generating data, which is not very structured. Also, when you're talking about mobile applications, you're making new releases of the applications every month, for instance, and they are backed by some data. And what if that data model is evolving with every release of that application? Well, if your application, if you launch a new version of your application and you users upgrade your existing version of the application to the new version or the latest version, and they try to open up a database corresponding to the old data model, you're probably going to see an error similar to this, depending on the platform on which they are attempting to open the application. So what are their options? Well, the naive approach is, ask your users to just delete the app and do a fresh install. That way, your latest version of the application is going to launch with the latest schema of the database, and everything is good. Well, that's terrible. You don't want that. It sort of defeats the whole purpose of having an embedded database if you're asking them to just get rid of all their local data and start from scratch. So typically, the way this is handled is data migrations, right? Data model migrations or data schema migrations. Here's a quick example. Anytime you're looking at very simple changes to the data model, right? I admit there are automatic data migration capabilities available. But when you're talking about production applications, you're not talking about simple data migrations. Most of the time, the schema changes are quite disruptive in nature. You might have to change the type, you have to split a column into multiple columns, or you have to rename a key as your app evolves, or a column name as your app evolves. Well, if you have to do any sort of have to take care of disruptive changes, have to deal with migrations of that nature, it can get very complicated. And if you got multiple rollouts, multiple versions of your application, then imagine the time that it would take to do this sort of iterative data migration. Again, goes back to one of the original pain point, user experience. If your app is taking too long to launch because now it's really doing a data migration, well, then you end up with the same problem that we started off with. Users are probably going to uninstall your app.